And welcome into the Thursday edition of Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063 The Game, brought to you by Chuck McDowell and Medical House Calls, Middle Tennessee's best medical care in the comfort and safety of your own home. For more information, go to medicalhousecalls.com. Medical House Calls, where the nearest clinic is your home. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. Hope everybody's doing well. Joe Rexrode, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing okay. As you know, we had the Cromwell Media holiday party last night.
We
So,
did.
that got a little wild. Got
It
a
did.
little wild. I stayed longer than you did. In
You
fact,
did.
I stayed longer than both of you did. But not too much longer. So, but then I came home and we have all these like chocolates and stuff that were sent that I've been not touching, and then I just absolutely went nuts on them. So I have like a chocolate hangover right now.
Hey, that's good. It's that time of year,
Not
man.
really. Yes, it is
Nick,
that time of year, but I need to stop.
Nick Keyser, how are you?
I'm good. Are we sure it's a chocolate hangover?
Oh,
Yeah, honestly, a sugar, like huge doses of sugar, I think make me feel worse than anything.
Dr.
yes.
Rexrode.
Maybe this is maybe this is just being of a certain age, but that is something that I think affects me more than anything. Now, it's not like I was, doing, fireball shots last night, doing keg stands at the party, but it was fun. Nick, I hope my wife, she talked to you and your fiance for a long time. I'm sure she was ripping me a fair amount, but I hope that went all right.
Actually, not at all. No ripping of Joe Rexrode whatsoever.
Oh boy.
Really?
Nope.
Now I need to know what's wrong with her. Okay.
Yeah, that could be
I'll
concerning.
revisit this.
That's right. We got a lot to get to on the program today. We'll be joined by Ryan Callahan from Go Vols 24/7 here in just a few minutes at 6:15. We'll recap Tennessee's recruiting class. Vol Twitter, interesting place on early signing period day. They were going nuts yesterday, so we'll get into some of that with Ryan at 6:15. Andrew Burnett, Preds head coach, at 7:15 as the Preds take on the Flyers tonight on the road. And Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports, his weekly visit from 8 to 8:30 today, talking Titans and all things NFL. So a lot to get to on the program. We'll take your thoughts all show long. 615-737-1025. Joe, some interesting news at Titans practice yesterday. Number one, it looks like Ryan Tannehill will be the guy if Will Levis can't go on Sunday against Seattle, which not a huge surprise there, but they came out and actually said it yesterday. So Tannehill will be the guy if Levis can't go. And Caleb Farley back on the practice field for the Titans yesterday as well. And also Nick Westbrook-Akine season-ending IR. So a lot going on with Titans and their transactions yesterday. But Caleb Farley back on the field. Ryan Tannehill is going to be the guy on Sunday if Will Levis can't go. And NWI to IR. There's so much going on that I forgot what happened for a second.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, and the NWI thing, someone asked me this, and I did not see it Sunday. I did not notice, like, did he miss the end of the game? I didn't notice, but it's a hand injury. So didn't see when it happened, but of course, as anybody knows, you put on IR right now, that means you're done.
Yeah.
For the year and potentially done in Nashville. TD last night, almost kind of like gave me a hug, NWI, man, you all right?
One out.
Yeah, yeah. So, but that'll be interesting with him. First of all, just I personally think that, if you can have him back, I think he's a great guy in the locker room, and he's a solid player. And you just want him to be down. It's not his fault, where he is in the pecking order. He's going to do as much as he can to get on the field. You just want it harder for him to play. But I would, if I were the Titans, the price is going to be right. I mean, I can promise you that. If I was the Titans, I would be interested in bringing him back. But it's possible that he could find a better opportunity somewhere else. He did not last time he was out there. So could be the end of the NWI era. We will see about that. And it was really cool to see, Caleb Farley just running around. I'm just watching the videos of practice. Because that guy's been through so much. It's really unbelievable how much that guy's been through. So
Yeah.
Don't know what it means. I wouldn't make too much of it from an impact on the Titans at any point, angle, but good for him.
Yeah, good for him to get back out there. Like you said, he's been through a lot on the field and off the field this year. And when we start talking about the back stuff with him, anytime you could see him back out there was good. And look, just obviously I'm not a medical expert. Just from my eyeballs watching the videos of him being on the field, it looked like he was moving around pretty well out there. So that was good to see. So I don't know that means that he's going to play at any point this regular season here, but the fact that he's back out on the field is good, and it's good to see him back out there. And we'll see what that means for him and his career as they move forward here. Joe, another guy I was wondering about yesterday, and he talked about this a little bit with some of the media. Danico Autry has 11 sacks this year. He's 33 years old. We've been talking about him and how much of an impact he's had on the Titans defense for a while. 11 sacks. His contract is running out at 33 years old. So, like, conventional wisdom says that it's probably time to move on, at least from my opinion, in terms of, like, just if you're traditionally looking at this situation, you look at the age and then the contract coming up, and a lot of times that's when people, cut guys this loose. What about in Danico Autry's case? The numbers would suggest it doesn't look like he's slowing down that much at the age of 33. How much interest do you think there should be for the Titans to bring him back?
Well, I think plenty if the price is right again. And I guess with him it's not the same thing, we're talking about the NWI, I mean, I think, but I don't know. It's really interesting. You get to that age and you could see guys like this struggle to find a lot out there. But I mean, all this guy does is just go out there and beat the crap out of people every week, and make plays. I mean, I absolutely, and he not just going into the year, for most of the year, was convinced, this will be it for Danico Autry. It makes sense. Just a tremendous 3-year run. Talk about getting what for all the, bad signings, bad choices, bad return on investment. Talk about massive return on investment here with Danico Autry. Just a fantastic signing. One of the best signings John Robinson had, honestly, free agent signings. When you think about what he did, and even just the first year, you get the 1 seed, and he's a big part of that. And he's still just out there getting it done. So, I mean, to me, if it works out that you can do another year or two with him, I think why not? Why wouldn't you? I mean, he and Simmons have a good thing going. And I don't think it's going to cost you a ton, but maybe someone else out there, really likes him for a year in their system and wants to overpay him. That'd be great for him.
Yeah, it would be great for him. I do think, though, that there's a chance there for the Titans if they wanted to bring him back. Maybe that works in their favor just because he is 33 and he'll be 34 next July. So, I mean, traditionally, guys like that are not getting big money. Now, traditionally also, Joe, guys who are 33 years old aren't putting up 11 sacks in a season either. So there's that part of it too that you got to consider if you're another team out there. But I do wonder, what that looks like. If I'm the Titans, and really probably if I'm anybody else, it's not going to be much more than like a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal where you can pretty easily get out of it after 1 year, just based on the timeline of his career right now. But at 34 next July, does the age bring the price down to a point where that makes a lot of sense for the Titans? He did say yesterday, Joe, that he wanted to come back and wanted to be a member of the Titans.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. I mean, he's comfortable in this defense, comfortable with the teammates. I mean, there's a guy who doesn't say much, man. Danico Autry, he just kind of goes out there and gets it done. So, yeah, I mean, that's one of those things for next year that has kind of materialized as like, well, maybe that would make sense. I mean, I guess, we've been talking all year about the Derrick Henry, and maybe it's sort of like he's like the Derrick Henry situation on the defense a little bit. And yeah, it would be like a 2-year deal that's really a 1-year deal kind of thing, But hey, as far as I know, he's got double-digit sacks coming in the next 2 years.
He's been outstanding. He really has. And, I know the defense as a whole, it's not been as good this year as we thought it would be and expected it to be. And look, even Autry has had some games this year where the impact hasn't quite been what you're looking for, but the whole picture looks pretty good with Danico Autry and has ever since basically the moment he walked through the door here. Simmons, obviously, you've signed him in what you think is the prime of his career. Harold Landry feels like he's coming on a little bit towards the end of the season here. So there are things to feel good about on that side of the ball, particularly on the line there. I do wonder, like Arden Key, what does that look like? What does that spot look like next year for the Titans in terms of trying to find another pass rusher that has a little bit more consistency to him?
Yeah, yeah, that it just hasn't been. You kind of see I think with him, you can kind of see the whole thing. You can see why, like the Titans signed him, and you can also see why he keeps bouncing around. It's
Yeah.
just it's not consistent enough. There's definitely talent there. I mean, I think Arden Key, I think he brings a ton of like energy and positivity to a room. I mean, and that's great. Like in camp, I think that guy probably helped a lot of people get through camp, and there's some value in that. Plus, he was amazing. He was like, holy crap, he's dominated this starting left tackle in the NFL. Look at this guy. But
How
yeah,
good is Arden Key? He's torching Andre Dillard every
yeah,
day.
that's first round pick Andre Dillard. I mean,
That's right.
holy cow. Uh, but yeah, I mean, you'd like to be a little better. I will say, like for next year, one thing that I think we're seeing for sure right now is, Harold Landry should be prime for a big year next year, which he's paid to have one, but that's one of those things where with his deal and everything, I'm looking at it like, okay, how's that going to go? But I think now, if you're the Titans, you got to be excited about what he's going to be now with a full off season. Put that knee way behind him, way in the rear view. I mean, the way he's playing now, not just that he's getting sacks and stuff, but he's back to like he's just everywhere. You know, he's around the ball all the time. So I mean, you feel good about that. Landry, Autry, Simmons, and then yeah, I think you'd like to, and maybe it is a pick somewhere in there, to address that. It's just that as we know, there's just so many needs.
Lot of needs. We're off and running today on Robby and Rexrode. Taking your thoughts, 615-737-1025. Our phone number. Coming up next, we'll be joined by Ryan Callahan. Go Vols 24/7. Get an update on Tennessee's recruiting day yesterday and some transfer portal activity as well. That's next. This is Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. Taking your thoughts, 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. The Vols, with an interesting day yesterday. Vol Twitter, always just a beautiful place. It was again yesterday. And to help us talk about some Tennessee Volunteers recruiting and the day they had yesterday, let's go to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And welcome in our buddy Ryan Callahan from Go Vols 24/7. Ryan, good morning, buddy. How are you?
Doing well. How are you guys?
We're awesome. Appreciate you taking time to be with us. So, Ryan, how would you describe the day that Tennessee had yesterday with recruiting, the early signing period? It was, to me, anyway, just a little bit uneventful, which I guess in some ways is probably a good thing for Tennessee.
Yeah, you took the word right out of my mouth, literally, with uneventful. It was a pretty quiet day. As expected, though, really by the time we got to yesterday morning, the possibilities that were out there for Tennessee to add to its class on signing day were kind of out the window by that point. They did start the day with a pretty big addition before signing day officially even started at 7 a.m. Eastern with getting Jermod McCoy, the Oregon State cornerback transfer. He announced his commitment just before 7 o'clock that morning. So got that one officially announced, and that's as big of a pickup for next season as probably anybody they would have added yesterday, if not bigger. So a really good news there for Tennessee. But yeah, for the signing class, they were mostly the hay was in the barn by that point, and they pursued some other guys down the stretch. But even then, aside from Jordan Seaton, the 5-star offensive tackle, who as of now has yet to sign, so you can't say he's officially off the board, but picked Colorado initially a couple weeks ago. Aside from him, they've not really had a lot of big names to pursue down the stretch. So it's been kind of a quiet finish. But overall, they still finished it with a good class, 13th as of right now in the 24/7 Sports composite rankings, and still a lot of good players in this class that I think are going to help Tennessee quite a bit over the next few years. But just some missed opportunities in this class, and that includes kind of a quiet finish that they didn't really add anybody highly ranked over the past few months.
Yeah, Jordan Seaton stands on the table for Colorado, and he's like, well, maybe I won't go to Colorado after all. So that's an interesting one. But so apparently what that looks like Oregon and Maryland are battling for him now? Is that apparently the word?
Maryland is definitely the one that we've heard the most. I've not heard as much Oregon, but there's people are trying to figure out who else is really in that one. Tennessee has at least been in communication with Jordan Seaton. I don't know how much is going to come of that, but that they're still in the picture at least. So, we'll see where that one goes. I'm not going to be surprised by anything in that one at this point. It's been such a chaotic recruitment. I mean, he goes into his announcement day a couple weeks ago, and everyone's thinking, most people are thinking it's Tennessee, but everyone's thinking it's going to come down to Tennessee, Oregon, and Ohio State, and he picks Colorado. On national TV at that, in an announcement that no one knew was happening on national TV. So it's been a weird recruitment, certainly down the stretch. It's at this point, any curveball he throws at people, no one's going to be caught off guard by that anymore.
So I do this every year, Ryan, and I think a lot of people can relate. Signing day, you look at who the top players, and then you wonder about them next year, and then a year later, like, oh yeah, that guy was never going to play as a freshman, But I do wonder about a couple, and not just freshmen, but of the additions, because that's what it is now, right? It's like the combo portal high school recruiting classes. So, first of all, you mentioned McCoy. I definitely would think he has a great chance to be a starting corner next year. Jermod McCoy, Holden stays. Now he's the transfer tight end. I assume he also should have a significant role. What about Jordan Ross on the edge, and then what about Mike Matthews at receiver? Do you think those two freshmen coming in are good enough to come right in? They've had other good receivers, maybe not this level of receiver, right, in these recent classes.
Yeah, it's really interesting you bring that up. I was just talking with someone about this last night. Here's where I am with this in regard to Tennessee. They've not shown a tendency to want to start freshmen that way, but they've not had many guys like this. So this is going to be a really interesting test case for them. I think Mike Matthews would have the better chance maybe, but it would depend on the opportunity. And that will probably depend on whether Brew McCoy comes back and what else they do in the transfer portal. They are involved with a wide receiver right now, Tulane wide receiver Chris Brazel, trying to get him. He would potentially be a plug-and-play starter to replace Ramel Keaton, and that would kind of allow them to keep everything mostly intact. If Brew McCoy comes back, you pretty much have your starting lineup there. And that would be bad news for Mike Matthews if he wants to start as a true freshman. So it will be interesting to see how that plays out. So I think he will play. I will be surprised if he doesn't play a good bit as a true freshman. But as far as starting goes, I'm a little skeptical of that. And then in Jordan Ross, the biggest problem for him is not that he's not talented, because he really is, and he had a good senior season. I just think he's coming into a position group that doesn't set up extremely well for him, because he's behind James Pierce, and then Joshua Josephs is at that position, and they've got Caleb Herring, who played a little bit as a true freshman this year as well. So, they've just got some depth at that position. It's really odd that Tennessee has done this good of a job of stacking talent, but more so than anywhere else on the roster, Tennessee has some, late 90s Tennessee level talent at the edge rusher position. So they really are doing a good job at that position. And that's maybe the downside for Jordan Ross, is that it's a good situation for him where he can come in and learn and still maybe get on the field with the way Rodney Garner rotates guys, but probably not a day one starter, but a guy that can definitely get on the field if he shows he's ready to play.
Ryan Callahan with us here on Robby and Rexrode. Ryan, how do you view the quarterback position as a whole right now for the Vols? Obviously, Nico taking over next year. Merklinger added yesterday as a 4-star out of Savannah, Georgia. But overall, what do you make of kind of the depth and the quality of the quarterback room for the Vols?
Not ideal, and it wasn't this year either, obviously, with Joe Milton and Nico Iamaleava being the only two scholarship quarterbacks. But they got through this year without a catastrophe, at least so far. Let's see if Joe Milton opts out of the bowl game and leaves them with one scholarship quarterback. That could always set up a disaster. But so far they've gotten through this year, and I think their plan right now, well, not their plan, but maybe just what they have to do. And Josh Heupel kind of alluded to this yesterday. They might have to do the same thing again with two scholarship quarterbacks, and they do have Gaston Moore, the walk-on, who followed them from USF, and that they trust a lot and that knows the offense, who they can kind of rely on as a third quarterback and maybe even the backup to start next season. That'll be interesting too. Will they give Jake Merklinger, the true freshman, the backup job just because he's on scholarship, or will Gaston Moore initially be the number two? That'll be maybe an interesting sort of competition during the off season, because you do have to get a freshman up to speed and ready to go into a game. But they do have two guys, and that's not an ideal situation, but it's such a tricky situation too, because most, if not every quarterback that you find in the transfer portal is looking to play. And if you go out there looking for a depth guy, it's going to be hard. So I don't know that they're going to find a fit to come in behind Nico Iamaleava, who, of course, everyone's heard about the reported NIL deal and everything. No one's going to believe they can beat him out for the starting job. So if you're trying to sell that opportunity to someone, it's not going to be very attractive. And if there's someone out there looking for just a backup job, A, he's probably not very good, and B, that's probably a 1 in 1,000 player that's not looking to play in the transfer portal. So I think they might have to ride it out one more year before they add a 2025 quarterback and get back to 3 scholarship players there. But we'll see. They'll at least look at all options. But we asked Josh Heupel about that yesterday. Is it hard to get another quarterback with a guy like Nico at the top of the depth chart? And his answer was, yes, sir, it is. And that's an unusual answer for Josh Heupel, but definitely the funniest moment of his press conference on signing day.
Yeah.
So, Ryan, you mentioned Joe Milton. I've taken no word as confirmation he's playing. I mean, they're practicing now, preparing for Iowa. You think it's still possible he ends up saying, yeah, see you later. I don't want to mess with Iowa.
Yeah, that's been my assumption for most of the month, that Joe Milton is going to play. But the longer this thing goes and the closer we get to the bowl game, we're hearing a little bit more. Some of it's speculation, but some of it's from people close enough to the situation to make me wonder if there's something to it. A little more talk that maybe he still could opt out of the bowl game, and I'm not sure we're going to find out an answer on that really soon. because Josh Heupel is kind of cagey with stuff like this just enough that he might not want Iowa to know that Joe Milton's not going to play if that's what's happening. So I could still see Joe Milton opting out of this game. I don't know what's going to happen right now. I've heard just enough conflicting information that I'm not ruling out anything. But, yeah, my assumption for most of the month has been Joe Milton's going to play in this game, the Citrus Bowl being in Orlando, his hometown, that might be the tiebreaker, even if it is a tough call for him. From a draft standpoint, he's got the Senior Bowl that can give him another evaluation opportunity, and that might be better than playing an Iowa team that can really muddy up a game and make it a 17-13 kind of slugfest. That's not really going to be very impressive for a quarterback trying to impress NFL scouts. So I'll be fascinated by that. But obviously, a lot of Tennessee fans ready to move on to Nico and get the Nico era started. So I'm sure a lot of people are pulling for that and wanting to see him start this bowl game. But we'll be keeping a close eye on that the next week or two. I wouldn't rule out just yet that Joe Milton still might opt out of this game.
Well, Ryan, really appreciate your perspective as always. Thanks so much for carving out some time to be with us this morning, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot, guys.
Absolutely. Ryan Callahan from GoVols 24/7, our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. We'll react to what Ryan had to say, get thoughts from Tennessee fans. Joe, some Tennessee fans freaking out yesterday, which was interesting to watch. I'll get into that more coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Tune in later this morning at 8:45 for your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click and win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Pick to Click brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold. Also, make sure you check out the Boca Raton Bowl. Bowl season is back. 102.5, 106.3 The Game, and 94.9 The Fan. Your home for college football bowl games and the college football playoff. Presented by Twin Peaks and Parma Tractor and Equipment. Catch the Boca Raton Bowl tonight at 6:30 on 94.9 The Fan as South Florida takes on Syracuse. For a list of games carried on 102.5, 106.3 The Game, and 94.9 The Fan, hit up our website at thegamenashville.com/bowl games. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you on this Thursday morning. Thanks to Ryan Callahan for being with us in the last segment. Joe, as he laid out, Tennessee at the moment, number 13 in the composite rankings at 24/7 Sports in terms of their recruiting class, which is a good number. Now, having said that, Georgia, Alabama, Texas, who's now a member of the SEC, Auburn, Oklahoma, LSU are all ahead of Tennessee in the rankings in the conference. So while 13 is good, and there's a lot of good players, we think, in that class, and they got a couple of 5-stars in there as well. A lot of Tennessee fans freaking out yesterday, Joe, of where they're currently placed in the SEC and what that means about how they're going to be able to compete moving forward. What do you think of Tennessee's recruiting class as a whole?
Well, first of all, so when you say freaking out, because they've been right in this spot for a while, like it's basically pretty consistent and it's a good spot. I mean, you stack classes like this, they're getting close to the blue chip formula, which is essentially that 2/3 of your, I think 2/3, right? I think 2/3 or 70% of your roster is 4 or 5 stars. The rest of it less, and that's sort of been the formula. If you want to do math on being able to compete for a national championship, you got to have that. So and that's so they freaking out. Is it just like hoping that all of a sudden he was gonna land a few big? But I didn't even know who they were. Like Ryan was saying, there wasn't really anyone other than Seton recently that I know of that was like a huge pursuit. You know what I mean?
I think it's been a combination of the recruiting. They were hoping that a couple more guys maybe you could get in on in the last minute, or the transfer portal being a little bit more active than they have been there.
Yeah. Well, and I get that. I mean, they haven't gone massive in the portal, but I think they've been pretty effective in the portal. And I think that, I mean, to me, it's like, where do they, they've got Ethan Smith, this young tight end, they think is going to be a star. But you need more there. Like Castles was a good pickup this year, I thought. I mean, he immediately comes in, and helps out with Jacob Warren and makes some big plays. I think this Notre Dame tight end they got is going to be very important. And I think the Oregon State cornerback is going to be. So, I mean, to me, it's like, did you fill specific needs that are going to translate immediately in the portal to next year? And they did. And also, this isn't sexy, but the fact is they kept their whole offensive line. And like you want to be better there, you want another Darnell Wright, you want a first-round pick, but still bringing those guys back at tackle and certainly Cooper Mays, that's a big deal, to have that continuity. I think that'll really pay off for them next year, and that area is where I'm looking at like, okay, where's the recruiting paying off in development in young offensive linemen who are starting to become really good players for you? That's what I'm not seeing yet. That's one area of a concern. But I think there's no reason to me to freak out. I mean, so much of it comes down to it's Nico next year, right?
Yeah.
If Nico is what they think he is, what I think he absolutely could be, and what his recruiting profile says, I mean, they're going to absolutely have a chance to be in that 12-team playoff, and that is now the new standard. And you want to get in the tournament, and maybe at some point the Tennessee gets in and they keep losing in the first round, and then you're like, well, that's just not good enough. But I think you stack classes that are, I mean, because so Ryan said there are 13 composite. I think they're, by what I'm looking at, 11 in the composite. But regardless, that's pretty good. I mean, it's not like run around and like biggest thing ever, but you stack classes like that year after year after year, and you have continuity and stability. That goes a long way. And then the quarterback position can elevate that, and that's what it's about the next couple of years. They are ahead of Florida now. Boy, did they plummet at
Yeah,
the
they
end.
did. They sure did. No question
Speaking
about
of
that.
freaking out, I mean, how about Florida fans? They're ready. You message board geniuses. It's all it is like just fire him. Just fire him now.
Just go ahead and
Please
get him
fire
done.
him.
Well, that's why I didn't think Chasing Big Joe and I had a big discussion about this of like, is Billy Napier going to get fired? I was like, no, he's got the number 3 recruiting class in America, which he did at the time. And I'm looking at the composite rankings right now, and they've dropped down to 16. They've gone from 3 to 16. It's not very good. I mean, it's not like it's a horrible class, but when you're at 3 and you go to 16, that's a huge difference.
Right. It's not a horrible class, but it's a huge plummet, and that has been the big thing, right? Is like, look at these absolute 5-star blue chippers coming in, and a few of them are now elsewhere, and he might have a tough go. But look, I mean, Florida, talk about a place that badly needs stability, but they can't get out of their own way. It should be fun to watch. The problem is you still can't beat them in the swamp.
There's that. JD from Brentwood on the text line says, this is the first impact of Texas and Oklahoma. Without them, Tennessee would be 4th in the SEC. All teams above them are national powers that Tennessee won't out-recruit. Oklahoma and Texas just bumped Tennessee further down. What do you think of that from JD from Brentwood?
Yeah, well, hey, recruiting, playing. I mean, 2 more tough teams. So so next year Tennessee goes to Oklahoma, right? Yeah, they go to Oklahoma. Yep. So that can. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be wild, as we just talked about. First of all, determining the 2 teams that play in the SEC title game, when one of them, there will be years where one of the teams in Atlanta is like the 5th best team in the SEC, but they just happen to get the lucky schedule that year. I mean, it's going to be infuriating. Not that they should still have divisions, because when you have a 97 team conference, then you shouldn't do divisions. But there's a lot about this realignment that's going to be stupid. But hey, I mean, it's the best league. I mean, there is no doubt about that now. So, I mean, Tennessee under Heupel has been about right there. They've been, not up there with Georgia, Alabama, and LSU, but right, and A&M actually, and they're ahead this year. They're ahead of A&M. This year they're ahead of Florida. So that's pretty good. But again, it's also like, I mean, even class rankings, Robbie, like they matter, but I like like Colorado, for example, they have the 99th best class.
Yeah.
5 dudes. Okay. Now maybe they'll get Seton, and that'll help. But they have the number 1 portal class. So then the combined, they're 21. That's what really the combined rankings, which I'm trying to find the combined rankings. That's what matters, right? Like, what's Tennessee combined?
How about Auburn getting into the top 7? Hugh Freeze getting in there and doing some recruiting down there in Auburn, baby.
I mean, Hugh Freeze, that dude, he is forked tongue, man. I mean, that dude is. I mean, he will convince somebody to, someone wearing white gloves to buy a ketchup popsicle. I mean, yeah. And then you throw in the NIL that that place is absolutely they can't handle where they've gone. So yeah, I'm not surprised.
615-737-1025, our phone number. Coming up next, it's time for the best and worst things in sports. We'll take your best things, your worst things on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063 The Game.
The best and worst of the sports week. Now on Robby and Rexrode.
On ESPN.
1025 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
This is the worst. You look like you're feeling sorry for yourself. Believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
He's one of one. He is him.
This is a Coke bottle. It's not a crystal ball.
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
Okay, let's go.
It is that time of the day, time for the best and worst things in sports. We'll take your submissions as always, 615-737-1025, our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Joe Rexrode, with that in the background, your best and worst things in the world of sports.
I will say, now that Nick has sent the little video of the kid going, okay, that's good, I kind of think it's cool. But boy, at first I was like, what in the world am I listening to? All right. Well, my best in sports, I gotta say. Wait a minute. Someone's asking, what did I have for breakfast this morning, bud? Language? Wait, I don't know. Sorry, text line distracted me. I'm gonna go with Drew Lock, and just the pass he threw to Jackson Smith and Jigba, and the performance he gave in a backup role, and the raw emotion, and also the sideline reporting by Lisa Salters, lives in Nashville, in that moment. That's my best thing, because that should be for anybody. First of all, when all this stuff happened with Clarissa Thompson and makeup crap, which is just ridiculous, continues to be ridiculous. I heard a lot of, who gives a crap about sideline reporting? Sideline reporting is very important. We don't realize how dependent we are on it as viewers, but sometimes, like, if you don't have it, you're like, wait, I want to know what's going on with the QB who just got hurt or whatever it is. A lot of those interviews are worthless, and it's just like, cliches, and it's like, the questions aren't great, but that was such a great example of a reporter letting someone do it, but then also kind of, okay, tell us more. Just tell us more, let him unload, kind of like just unleash his emotions. It was a fantastic job in what that's supposed to be. So that's my best. Good. My worst is, it's just basketball injuries. It's awful. Madison Green is a really promising freshman. Vanderbilt women's basketball, best start in a long time. I think 11-2 now. And Madison Green, key reserve off the bench, ACL tear, out for the season. Destiny Wells, fantastically fun guard from Belmont to Tennessee, transfer, out for the season. Colin Smith, Vanderbilt men's basketball, torn Achilles, out for the season. Awful, awful week.
Yeah, it's not good. Not good at all. And sometimes you run into that in basketball, but it does feel like there's been a lot of that lately, especially around here. So not a good start on that front. Nick Keyser, your best and worst things in the world of sports.
I don't have 30,000 things for you, just so we're clear. So
that's good.
All right. I want to start off with Ivan Marashenko, who debuted with the Washington Capitals last night. This is a really cool story. I didn't really see this until after our Christmas party last night, but he made his debut. But more importantly, 21 months ago, he had Hodgkin's lymphoma, so he overcame that to become a pro hockey player. So kudos to him. So glad to see him beat cancer, and was drafted 17 months ago. So I love a feel-good story like that. And really quickly too, Yager debuted at 51 yesterday in the Czech League. So that's my best. My worst is that the Titans were so close. I mean, this has sat with me all week. I don't know why. It sits with me longer than I thought it would. But in overtime, I cannot believe that they could not finish it. I mean, shouldn't have even gone to overtime, but I just could not believe that they lost in overtime. But look, it doesn't matter at this point. Just kind of would have liked to have seen them win, but that is the worst thing for me this week. So, Robby, how about you?
Keyser just destroyed, gutted by the Titans' loss to the Houston Texans. Still thinking about it. I respect it. I like it. My best thing, Ja Morant back for the Memphis Grizzlies. I hope, Joe, that throughout this process, he's done a little bit of reflecting and some learning about the behavior that he had last year, and just what all went into that, and we've discussed the John Morant stuff from last year, but I hope like the suspension really got his attention, and that we don't see any more off the court incidents from him anymore moving forward. Because watching him on the court, the guy is sensational. I mean, he's unbelievable to watch, and the Grizzlies have been terrible this year without him. I am interested to see if he can pull him up enough to make a push to get in the playoffs here. But it was fun to see him back on the court the other night. I was able to catch some of it, even though the Preds game was going on at the same time. But I was able to catch some of it, and he had 34 and won the game for the Grizzlies. Good to see him back on the floor the other night. So that's my best thing in sports. My worst thing in sports, quite simply, is the Titans' offensive line. And I guess we could have probably handed them this award of the worst thing in sports every week of the year to this point.
Maybe if we did yearly, like the worst of the year, they could win.
I feel like this week was especially bad, though. Like, it's the combination of the pass blocking, where you get your quarterback sacked 7 times and hit 11, and then your just complete inability to run the football against Houston. Like, I think last week might have been the worst week when you combine the running game and the passing game. And I know the Cleveland game might give it a really close run there, so you could go either way of how you feel about that. The Cleveland game earlier this year from the offensive line, it was just brutal to watch on Sunday. They couldn't get anything going offensively. So the Titans' offensive line, my worst thing in sports.
Yeah. There's a lot of totally understandable to some degree talk about a lot of other stuff this week, right? And I mean, look, it's fair to question the predictability of Tim Kelly on Sunday, the first down runs and all that stuff. I mean, I got Jared yesterday on another losing effort for him and Jared versus Joe. It's like 5 or 6 in a row. Who knows?
You're on a roll.
Well, but it's just, and he's like, oh, yes, fire, Tim Kelly and bring in Arthur Smith. I mean, if you're going to have takes like that, you're going to lose. But it is simple. I mean, I'm sorry. Like again, we like the blame pie. I mean, there's like a slice for all the other stuff. There's a slice. And then the whole rest of it is that group. It's just, it's the most, again, I've said it before, like I've watched Jared Goff for many years, and at times he lights it up for the Lions because he has totally clean pockets. But you put Jared Goff here this year, we'd be talking about how is that guy starting in the NFL anymore? He's awful. It's just, it's always going to be what football's about. It's the line of scrimmage. It's the trenches. It's not the fun stuff. It's not the sexy stuff, but it is still always going to be what it's about.
Ben on the text line says, I kind of have 2 worst things in sports. Why are 6-6 teams making bowl games? I think it's ridiculous. And on top of it, why are 6-6 teams playing 11-2 teams? I think if you have a winning record, you play a team with a winning record. And if you're a ranked team, you play another ranked team in bowl games. It's from Ben on the text line. He'd be really upset when like 5 and 7 teams make it every now and then.
Yeah. I mean, the answer is there's so many bowl games, they need to fill them out. And, sometimes it might be a team with that record in a lesser or a better conference than a team, right? With a team with a better record and a lesser. Hey man, all I know is this has been a consideration as a rampant. Do you like football or do you not like football? Because pretty soon we won't have any anymore. Watch the football. Love the football.
I got a text that says the worst thing, all the transfers from Vandy. Best thing, lots of signings and transfers in to replenish those defections. It's been a very interesting offseason to this point for the Vanderbilt Commodores. No question.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, the portal class is fantastic. There's some interesting stuff on that. I know we have to go to break pretty soon. Jaden McGowan had a big post on social media. Jaden McGowan going to South Carolina. And that's one of the bigger losses. London Humphreys is officially going to Georgia, I believe now.
Yep.
That's the biggest loss. But Jaden McGowan is definitely, I think, one of the bigger losses. Those guys are both, very talented, great return man, all that stuff. Well, he put this long post because apparently there's been all this stuff about NIL and asking for more money. And he put this long thing about it. That's all BS. He didn't ask for more money. And he said on there, if it was just about money, I would have stayed at Vanderbilt, which is pretty interesting. I mean, it kind of tells you where it was, as we've talked about, and Clark Lee in his way yesterday, he confirmed it too. Like they're throwing the checkbook around, and it's going to be really interesting to see new OC, new offense, new strength coach, Clark Lee is DC, and a whole bunch of, new players. And at this point, they've been flirting with the top 10 portal class. I did not think we would be talking about that. Don't know if it's going to translate to wins, but it's a big development. It's different.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, we'll get into the Preds. They take on the Philadelphia Flyers tonight, trying to get back on the winning path tonight on the road. Andrew Brunette joining us at 7:15 live from Philadelphia. All that coming up. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. We are scheduled to be joined by Andrew Burnett, Predators head coach at 7:15. Pred's taking on the Philadelphia Flyers tonight, trying to get back on the winning path. Looking forward to that conversation coming up here in about 10, 11 minutes or so. So we'll have that for you here in just a few minutes. Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports for his weekly visit from 8 to 8:30, talking all things NFL. Joe, I'm interested to see how the Preds respond tonight. You know, you get the ugly loss the other night against Vancouver. You won 13 out of 17. You had won 13 out of 16 heading into that one. And, you know, Brunette had talked about how he felt like they weren't necessarily playing their best heading into that game. And then it kind of caught up with them on Tuesday against Vancouver. An interesting test tonight on the road right before the Christmas break to see how they can respond and what that looks like. And if you can get a win tonight, I think you're feeling pretty good about yourselves and the ability to continue to not let the momentum just slip away from you, which they've done a good job of. I mean, look, they got hammered pretty good by Toronto a couple weeks ago, followed it up the next night and beat Montreal. They've done a good job of limiting the damage lately, and we'll see if they can do that again tonight. First meet of the day for Rexrode.
Dang it. I had a great point too, and I lost it. And I'll just say something stupid and said, do you know last time they had 2 losses in a row? And the last time they had 2 losses in a row was obviously before this, right? Before the 13 out of 17, when they lost 5 in a row right before it or whatever it was.
I would assume, to answer your question, no, I don't know the last time they lost 2 in a row because I think it's been a while. So
yeah, I think it was before the stretch. So they've done a good job of not doing that. So it would be a big bounce back for them. I mean, they've talked about, before the game and then after the game. Andrew mentioned the week, and the distraction level of a week like this with Christmas a few days away. It's a dad's trip and all that stuff. But I mean, every team has that general distraction this time of year as well, right? So you got to get over that. Maybe it's good to get on the road. There's another question you probably won't be able to answer, but I'll ask it anyway. Do you know how they are on, maybe Keyser knows it. This is something I could see Keyser knowing. How are they on the dad's trips or the mom's trips? What's their record? I didn't realize that they apparently invented the dad's trip in the 90s. Did you know that?
I did know that. I don't know what their record is on these dad's trips games. But I did know that they invented it. It's right out of a Barry Trotz invention. Now the whole league does it.
The whole league does it. I had no idea. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm interested to see. I mean, look, I do think
what's their record?
There is something to first off, Nashville, a very popular dad's trip destination, mom's trip destination around the league. I can't tell you how many times I've wandered out of the locker room and it's
yeah.
Oh, there's 75 members of the Vancouver Canucks over here. What's going on? Oh, it's the dad's trip. Cool. All right, cool. I mean, it happens all the time.
They have their kids' names on their shirts. That's cute.
That's
now
awesome.
They're going to go on a pedal tavern. Awesome.
Look at all that going on over there. Nashville, very popular destination for that. Vegas has become a very popular destination for that as too. So shout out to the Predators for taking them to Philadelphia. They all took a nice photo by the Rocky statue yesterday. Hope they all recognize that Rocky 3, the best movie.
Ooh, that's quite a take. That's quite a take. I mean, hey man, that's the Eye of the Tiger was introduced in that movie. Mr. T was in that one. I mean, I'm not gonna get mad at you for that one. Robby, we had, speaking of this, the trips. So if the Athletic were doing these player polls. And it's all these questions best player, most overrated, blah, blah, blah. So I've asked a few Preds who shall remain nameless because they all remain nameless. But it's best city you're most excited to go to, and then worst city.
Yeah.
So what do you suppose will come in first for least favorite city in the NHL?
I mean, if it was me, it would be Winnipeg or Edmonton when it's minus 35 degrees in January. But my guess is those are not the two that came in there. I'll go Arizona out there in the middle of the desert.
I think Winnipeg will probably win. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's got a chance. Columbus has a chance too. If you're a team with some real toughness, you're gonna do the dad's trip in February in Winnipeg. Okay,
yes.
go huddle around, go get some poutine, and shut up and have a couple hot toddies and
I'm going to guess Winnipeg has not traditionally been a very strong contender for a dad's trip around the league.
Yeah. But it's about spending time with your family. It's not about all the bars and the pedal taverns.
Here's the hotel. And now you've seen Winnipeg. Congratulations.
Winnipeg has some good bars, man.
Yeah. Look, I love the people of Winnipeg. No question about that. Joe, a quick eye on the farm. So Joachim Kimmel, Fred's first round pick, big night last night, scored a couple goals, including one that was just an absolute rocket on the power play from the left circle. He's got 19 points, 24 games, 8 goals on the season. Feels like he's starting to come along a little bit here. And that was last year. He joined the Admirals at the end of the year and had 13 points in 14 games, 6 goals, 7 assists. I'm not saying that he's like NHL ready yet, but when you start to take a look at things to be encouraged about moving forward, if you're the Predators, a lot of the young guys on the roster we spent a lot of time talking about. I do think Kimmel, based on what I've seen, has a chance to be pretty darn good at the NHL level. Like that, I don't know. As you trace back the history of the Predators franchise at forward specifically, I don't know how many guys they've had quite like this one that are coming off the pipeline.
Yeah, very promising, and he'll probably be here later than a lot of fans want. Barry Trotz has made that clear. Like, I got people commenting this week, like, why the heck is Stastny not up and I have to watch Luke Shen play, and things like that. But it's just, the answer is going to be the same from him, right? Overcook. But what'd you call his shot? Can you say that on the air? Because that's just a fantastic term for a shot.
Talking to Nick? I called it a cannon.
Oh, Nick called it that?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, can we say it? I mean, that's a fantastic term for a shot.
I think you could say it.
Yeah, you could say it. What's wrong with that?
Say it.
It's a piss missile.
Nick. There we go.
It is.
It's not good. If we get a violation, it's on you. Cool. No, that's a great term for a lethal shot, man. I got to remember that one.
He's got a rocket.
That's going to be my term. No, it's you watch the highlights of the Admirals, and of course, why wouldn't you? I mean, why wouldn't you be watching every Admirals game front to back?
Because I do.
He's a talent, and at some point, I think he's going to have a prominent spot here. At some point, it's going to, what do you think? So next year, Robby, both of you guys, next year, Kimmel full-time Nashville Predator?
I think there's a good chance that happens. Yes. If he, you got to stay healthy and continue to play the way he's playing right now. But if all those things check out, yes, I think there's a good chance he starts next year here. So,
okay.
I mean, look, if he keeps playing like this, there's a chance that by the end of the year he's here.
Gets a call up. Yeah. But sometimes you see that too, right? You see the call up, and then you see, you still end up in the American League a lot of the next year. But
sure.
No, it's exciting. They've got some other guys. Fetchkov, I know some people are excited about him there too. So, it's just, to me, it's like, who is going to be top line? I think they have a lot of good players, right? Good young players. You can fill out a lineup with they're producing NHL players, but who's gonna be a top line player for years here? Maybe he is. Maybe he's that guy.
Coming up next, we'll be joined by Predators head coach Andrew Brunette. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. Preds back in action tonight on the road in Philadelphia, taking on the Flyers. Puck drop 6 o'clock, pregame 5 o'clock here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. And with that in mind, we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Predators head coach Andrew Brunette. Andrew, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, fellas. Doing pretty good this morning.
Awesome. Appreciate you taking time to be with us. Andrew, you got some extra folks in the traveling party with you this time around in Philadelphia. What do you make of just the dad's trip in general, and how much fun has that been with you guys kind of hanging out with all the dads the last day or so?
Well, it's a real unique experience, especially for the dads and the players. I mean, the father-son relationship that's gone on through hockey and is pretty unique from a lot of different sports, and to see them here with their sons and seeing how we do things is always a fun experience. I've been through, actually was through the first one when Barry and David Poyle started in '98. So I've been through a lot of them. They're always fun. It's fun to see the dads and the sons and interact, but it's a great experience for everybody.
That does, of course, make for a lot going on, Andrew, other than hockey, and you already have that anyway, right? A few days from Christmas here. How is that? How is managing that as a coach, just trying to cut through things and still get the business part of the trip done?
Yeah, that's always the challenge. So, especially like you said, going through the holiday season, the distractions that are going on, and you lose. I thought that happened the other night, where all these other things are going on, and just a little bit of focus and your game kind of slips a little bit. So it's really important here to tighten it up. Obviously, as a coach, you don't sleep, but you also have to understand it is an unbelievable experience, and it is family. And the players, these are things the players will never forget. But yeah, we have to go to business here tonight a little bit.
So Andrew, you talked leading into the Vancouver game about the way your team was playing and how maybe you needed to see a little bit more with the way that they were playing. As a coach, when you're evaluating that, even though it's sometimes maybe you're getting the results and you're winning games, like how much are you paying attention to the overall process of it, and like how much can you kind of tell when maybe a downswing in that is starting to come?
Yeah, I think we're always aware. I think you self-evaluate every day and every game, and you could kind of tell we were finding ways to win, and you never want to discourage that or downplay that. But I didn't think we put 60-minute efforts, and there are a lot of things that went into that. Our schedule was so tight, so you're asking a lot if you think you're going to have it every night. But you could see little things slip. I didn't love our game, and 3 of the last 4 coming into Vancouver, and obviously didn't like it on Tuesday. So you're aware. You try to warn them. I've been a player too, and you're like, yeah, whatever, coach. But you could see the signs, and you try to write it before it's too far wrong. So that's kind of what we're in the process of trying to do right now.
UC Saros has been incredible. Peak UC Saros lately. Obviously, tough one the other night. Tough one in terms of, I think, a lot of stuff happening around him that wasn't on him. But he was emotional leaving that game, which we're not used to seeing. I guess, do you like to see that, first of all? You don't like to see what happened, but to see that emotion from him, and how do you feel, I guess, about him now with his next opportunity to be between the pipes?
Well, I always feel the same about Juice. He's one of the best goalies in the league, and yeah, you like to see the emotion. Obviously, he's frustrated himself, and frustrated that he let in the goals. But they were not, nothing on him. I thought our game, like I said a little bit earlier, was slipping a little bit, and unfortunately he ended up taking the brunt end of some miscues and mistakes and some bad bounces. And but you love to see passion. Passion in this game is you can't get out of the way of it. It's on every shift, every play. So but Juice, he's a highly competitive guy, and he'll be good tonight.
Andrew, obviously we've seen Tommy Novak be really productive for you guys, and then unfortunately sustains the injury. What have you made of the way that Novak has played since coming back in the lineup, and how challenging is that in the middle of a season when you're dealing with an injury, trying to get back up to speed?
Yeah, it's tough. I think we're seeing with Cody Glass too. It's just taken a little time. You miss that chunk of time when the league starts turning. It gets out of that training camp mode, and it gets faster, and teams get tighter, and the game, there's less room out there. So when they come back and missing a month or I guess a month with Tommy's injury, to come in and just get up to speed. So I think he's getting better. I think every game he's played better. I liked his game on Tuesday. And yeah, we need him to get back to the level he was early in the year, and we need his production. So he's getting there, and it is a tough time to get back.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you about Cody. Actually, I mean, you mentioned after the game, Andrew. I mean, he obviously it's as you said, it's garbage time, but he gets one to go. Do you think that could help him? And if he can maintain health, what's the expected trajectory for him?
Well, I think we're just he's like Tommy, that he's missed so much time. He missed a chunk of time early in the year, and then he came back, and I thought he got his game going. Then he got hurt again and missed another chunk of time, and he's slowly kind of getting back to speed. And a goal, I think, always helps. Especially an offensive guy that's produced, to get that goal, get the monkey off the back for the year, I think is always so important. I think he's still a work in progress. He's catching up day to day. I liked his game a little bit better each game. So, we're looking for him, and we're going to need him going down the stretch here to get healthy, for one, and to get back in the rhythm and the pace of the game.
Andrew Burnett with us here on Robby and Rexrode, Predators head coach. Andrew, obviously you've talked about the challenge that you and your coaching staff are facing right now with the amount of defensemen that you have, and it's a good problem to have that much depth. But Fabro has been the odd man out lately. What have conversations with him been like, and I guess how receptive has Fabro been to those conversations, given the fact that you guys got a lot of defensemen right now?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's never fun, and especially veterans that played in this league for a while. And it's tough it's tough as a coaching staff to make decisions. I think they're all really good defensemen. So you're trying to play either situationally who fits the best against who we're playing, or if a player is playing better, you want him to keep going. You don't want to lose that momentum. So yeah, it's hard. I mean, Dante's been really good. He works every day. He wants to get better. Of course, he's frustrated. Of course, he's upset. He wants to play. But he's been a joy to work for. He puts a lot of work into it. And when he gets back in, he'll find his game. They're good players. And like you said, as a coaching staff, it's a nice luxury to have, but it's also, it's not that fun all the time having to tell a guy he can't play. You're not playing tonight. And guys that have proven themselves in this league, especially.
Andrew, a lot of fans asked about the game misconduct and everything, the whole situation the other night with Jeremy and then Michael McCarron. In the moment, did you get a satisfactory explanation, like the way that all played out? Are you, I guess, comfortable with that?
Well, I mean, you're not always comfortable, but I think it was a fair explanation. I didn't really understand the call, which happens. Because, I kind of felt it was a tit for a tat, and he saw it a little differently, and you have to respect that. And then, it's the same old adage. I think you can't really, you got to keep your emotions in check if you're Michael, and you can't show a referee up, and that's what happens. And when you do that, you're gonna pay the price. So I'm understanding of the misconduct. I'm not completely understanding of the penalty.
Andrew, last thing for you. I mean, you were talking about your fantasy football team last time you were with us. Playoff update. Are things going well, or are we done at this point?
We're done. Yeah, no, I was one and done in the playoffs. My tough week last week. Really tough week.
Well, less distractions for you now.
That's right.
That's right. Exactly.
Andrew, thanks so much for taking time to be with us this morning. Good luck tonight in Philadelphia, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, guys. Thank you.
All right, Preds head coach Andrew Burnett, our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. We'll take your thoughts on Andrew Burnett, what he had to say, 615-737-1025, our phone number. We'll also get back into the Titans coming up in the next segment as well. All that ahead. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by Chuck McDowell and Medical House Calls, Middle Tennessee's best medical care in the comfort and safety of your own home. For more information, go to medicalhousecalls.com. Medical House Calls, where the nearest clinic is your home. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. Appreciate Predators head coach Andrew Burnett for being with us in the last segment. Let's go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Cam. Cam, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Good morning, fellas. Yeah,
what's going on?
So I'm curious because I watching these games, I feel like the old mighty mustache, Philippe. I'm curious if you guys feel like he's kind of evolved and he's got like another level to his play. And all of a sudden, I can't remember the last time that there hasn't been a lot of injuries going on with Phillip. And he's playing. I mean, every game you expect him to be there, and he's there. And I just kind of wanted your guys' intake on that.
Yeah, thanks for the call, Cam. I mean, Forsberg, he's been outstanding this year. 36 points, 32 games, 16 goals, 20 assists. I do think, like, in the back of my mind, I'm still thinking, all right, you're 32 games into an 82-game season. You got 50 left. That's a lot. Number one, can you sustain the way that you're playing, which has been very good to this point? And number two, can you stay healthy? Like, the thing about Forsberg is, other than last year when he had, the concussion that kept him out a while, he's never really had like a huge injury. Like it's never been like, some big knee injury or, a shoulder injury that's kept him out for 3 months. Like, it's always been 10 games here, 8 games there, 12 games here, 15 games there. And it's, it's never been like a major thing. But all that is kind of added up to where it feels like it happens once a year with him. And I think a lot of Predators fans are still waiting for the other shoe to drop there when it comes to, like, can he stay healthy the entire 82-game season? Because early in his career, the first 3 years he was a full-time player in the league, he played in all 82 games every year, and he's not done that since then. So he's been great. I think the number one question I have for him is, like, can he continue to play at this level where he's been dominant, 36 points, 32 games all season? And if not, Joe, can he stay healthy? That's the secondary question that comes with it, because I still believe the Predators, where they're at in the standings right now, they're probably a bubble team at best. 13-3-0 has been really good. They're going to come down from that pace. And in order to be on the right side of that bubble, they're going to need Philip Forsberg. There's no question.
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny because, we do at the Athletic, we do a lot of it's like team-wide stuff, like different questions. And every year it's like if you could give, the team you cover, one thing, what would it be? And I actually was, I look at this team, obviously there's a lot that they could use to be a top team in the league, but I went with bubble wrap for Philip Forsberg. And I looked at it, and the last 4 full seasons, let's take out the 2 COVID seasons when he got hurt then too, but if you just take the last 4 full 82-game seasons, he's missed an average of 19 and a half games per season.
Yeah.
So that's it, man. And if you take him out, it's been, I love the O'Reilly Forsberg Nyquist combination. Even the other night, didn't register, but there were some, just some opportunities created that were like Nyquist had this ridiculous cross ice pass and Forsberg just didn't quite, center it up and he kind of missed it. But like, you take Forsberg off this team for any amount of time, and I struggle to see, a whole lot of offense. You're going to have to win some 2-1 games to have a chance. But, if he can do it, then as you've said, he's got a chance to set records this year.
Yeah. And, the pace has slowed down a little bit. Like, he's not on a 100-point pace anymore, but he is in, like the mid 90s. So, you'll take that
right
for Philip Forsberg. We'll see if they can get back at it tonight and get back in the win column as they take on the Philadelphia Flyers. Joe, I want to get back to something you touched on earlier with the Titans, which I think is interesting. Like we talked about Autry and how much interest the Titans should have in bringing him back next year. I do feel like one of the encouraging developments late in the season has been Landry and the way that he's played, both from a sack total standpoint, but also to your point, it does feel like he's been more around the football and looking like the Harold Landry of old as of late. Why do you think that? I'll ask it this way: have you seen enough out of Landry these last few weeks here that makes you think that the investment that they've made in him financially is going to be a pretty darn good one starting next season when he presumably gets through the offseason healthy and is ready to go?
I think the current version of Harold Landry, which, if he plays like this, then I think he's going to be a 10 to 12 sack guy. But also, again, he does everything. He's an Iron Man. He sets the edge. Like, yeah, I think so. I think absolutely. This version of Harold Landry is worth paying like that. And I said the other day, and I know some people will disagree with this, but I think this version of Jeffrey Simmons, you want Jeffrey Simmons to be whoever, Chris Jones, Quinn Williams, Aaron Dow, and maybe he's been a tick below that, but I think in both cases right now, whatever else it looks like around them, I mean, I think those are contracts that in the end are going to look like, yeah, that was worth doing. That was the right thing to do.
It's interesting. I'm looking at his snap counts like from the season. So Harold Landry, traditionally, this, Joe, when he's been healthy, he's been 86% of the snaps, 94% of the snaps, 90% of the snaps. It's at 72% this year, which is, it's a significant drop off. I'd be interested to break that down, like the last like 3 or 4 games. What does that look like? Have the Titans found a formula to maybe maximize him moving forward, or is he going to be a guy when he's, back to being completely healthy and into next season starts playing 85, 90% of the snaps again? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, ideally, I will say one thing about, like the depth at that spot, because, obviously Key has not been nearly consistent enough. I thought last game, like Rashad Weaver, did fine. I mean, that there's one of the few positions where I feel like they have pretty decent depth, or a guy like that who's been a healthy scratch this year at times can come in and be at least solid. But that's a long way of getting to, I think some of the answer is that they've got to have another, kind of key player, I think, at that position next year, whether it's a drafted guy or a free agent signing, and I think if you can hit on that, whatever you do, then hopefully you don't have to play him that much. I think as he gets a little older, you want maximum bang for your buck, and you would assume that would mean giving him a little bit more rest than he got in those early years.
Oh, and by the way, on Sunday against Houston, played 83% of the defensive snaps. So that number for the season being at 72, it does feel like he's ramping it up lately with some of these games.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see the game by game on that because, early it was low. So if he's in the 70s overall, he's probably had, and it certainly seems that way watching the games that he's been well into the 80s in a lot of recent games.
The Autry Simmons Landry fund, it's interesting that was the perceived strength of the team this year heading in. And we've talked about like the pass rush and not just us, Vrabel's talked about it too, like the investment level that they've made with those guys. And, at times this year that it just hasn't been effective enough. So like, there's that part of it that I think makes you concerned. Like if I'm a Titans fan, it's like, okay, well, you guys have spent all season talking about how the pass rush hasn't been as effective as they've needed it to be. Why would you bring back an Autry at that point? Why wouldn't you go in a different direction, especially when he's going to be 34 next year and start to do that? I hear that, but I also like Autry with the way that he's played lately, and Landry, I think, finally getting back up to full speed. If you add in a Jeffrey Simmons to that, a healthy Jeffrey Simmons, the foundational pieces are still there to potentially have a very good pass rush next year. Now, I'm with you. Like, it's going to require, I think, adding somebody else either via the draft or free agency on the other side of Landry. But Like the hero, when you start to look at things that have encouraged you for the Titans in the latter part of the season here, the list isn't very long. The emergence of Landry looking more like Harold Landry is near the top of that on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, another thing that they really need to address is, I mean, I kind of thought that Tier Tart might get the long-term deal here. I think Tier Tart maximizing himself, fitting in here, everything going well, is a great long-term signing, and that's obviously out the window. They need to find, more help there. I mean, you could kind of look at it like, and it's earlier, certainly in like Simmons' timeline than it was Jarrell Casey, but they had a great player still. Like in 2018, Jarrell Casey was still a great player. And they draft Jeffrey Simmons, and it was just like, how do you not draft a guy like that? I mean, I keep adding like, positions they need to draft, but whether it's that, like they need to find another consistent high snap complement inside for Simmons. So add that to the list. It's a long one.
It is, no question about it. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll have the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode coming up next. Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports joining us from 8 to 8:30 here on the program. So looking forward to that as well. We'll always take your thoughts on our text line, 615-737-1025, our phone number. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, the game.
Now on Robby and Rexrode.
You're everyone's problem. That's because every time you go up in the air, you're unsafe. I don't like you because you're dangerous.
That's right.
Nice, man. I am dangerous.
I feel the need for speed.
It's that time of the day, time for the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode. You can check it out every morning at 7:45 here on the program. Joe Rexrode's rant of the day. Joseph, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Did I miss something there at the end? Did I miss?
Keezer's throwing audibles on me. I don't know what's going on over here.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Never know with that Nick Keezer. Today, there are a lot of possibilities. I would like to that I'm very disappointed in Stilly for not showing up to the party. I assume he's embarrassed that he keeps losing to me in Jared versus Joe. Not acceptable. Shout out to Caroline Fenton for showing up though. And also Katie came to the party strictly because she wanted to meet D-Mace.
Yeah.
Because she wanted to thank him for all the joy of her college experience, and he did not show. And so I'm also mad at him. But I'm not going to rant about any of those things anymore. I'm going to rant about the Vols. I'm going to rant about Vol Twitter. I didn't really it's just an absolute gold mine. I mean, I just keep going to it. It's a low-hanging fruit, and I keep just grabbing it. But I didn't really get into this much as it was just a busy day. But since you talked about it earlier in the show, I've kind of zoomed around a little bit, some of my favorite Vol Twitter spots, and God, it's amazing the bitching that people are doing. I mean, so I want to go to, I think this is because look, there's like Vol Twitter where it's like, Sam 8193742, and it's like I'm not going to indulge that crap. I mean, some of those people, you look at their TL, you're like, oh my God, hey, this should not even be allowed on the internet, But there are legitimate people who actually put their names on things and stuff that I find to be like, our guy, Big Orange Mac. I mean, I think like I went through the way he experienced yesterday, and it was like some disappointment, but also remember the last coach, had these great classes. And then, so, you got to keep everything in perspective. But Andre Hollings is at A Hollings 1, someone who I think, is like a kind of a voice of the Tennessee fan, someone who's constantly in the conversation, who I think is reasonable. And I want to read this X post for you.
Okay.
It says, quote, I see so much of Butch Jones's legacy on my timeline. Low expectations, low standards, easily satisfied. There you go. My goodness. Do we need to do a refresher on Butch Jones, everybody? I mean, now look, Josh Heupel again, he may end up being and I know, frankly, I know that he didn't like this suggestion earlier this year in written word, but a bridge coach, he may be. Okay. But a bridge coach is still someone who does win, does recruit well, does his job well. Maybe he can't get the Vols to a national championship. That's what happens in the SEC, is that Alabama and now Georgia have everybody chasing their tail to the point that it's like, well, I guess we'll move on to the next guy. Like if Brian Kelly doesn't win a natty in how many years? How many years does Brian Kelly have to win a natty before it's like, what's move on? And he's a very good coach.
And I would say if they're not in the playoff, well, the playoff conversation has changed.
Exactly.
If they're not competing for a national championship within the next 2 years, they're going to run him out of there.
Yeah, and that's so. Look at so many programs that look at Florida right now. I mean, they just, and I can't blame them considering the way Dan Mullen acted and stuff he said and the way they recruited. I mean, I'm not blaming that move, but they're just in a constant cycle trying to find someone to compete. Tennessee needs stability, and they've got a guy who gives you stability at some point. Look, if they're not going to be in the 12 team regularly, then that's not good enough. That's not good enough. But folks, Butch Jones, Jeremy Pruitt, Derek Dooley. You know, I mean, let's keep things in perspective here. Yesterday, to me, was a good day for Tennessee. It wasn't a great day. It wasn't an incredible, fantastic, magnificent day, but it was a good day. And yet I'm seeing reaction that says it was like some kind of a disastrous day. And
Well,
I mean, come on.
I
know I'm not talking to Vault Twitter here.
I
but
know
like
that's
but
what
the
I was gonna
reasonable
say.
members, the reasonable members of that are who I'm looking at, and I'm a little bit perplexed.
Well, I think, look, how often have we been told, recruiting is the lifeblood of college football? And it still is. Like, you still have to recruit really well, and then you have to use the transfer portal wisely. And I think you're seeing a lot of the top programs do that around the country. So it is different. Like, the portal adds a different element to it. But you look at the recruiting rankings, and I went through it earlier, right? Like, there are like 7 SEC teams in front of you. So it's like, if you're going to get to a point where you're competing for a national championship, is having the number 13 recruiting class in the country good enough to do it? And I don't know. I mean, like you said, if Nico is what you think he is, then the most important position you figured out, and then you can kind of build around there. But yeah, there was one point in this recruiting class in this cycle, Joe, where I think they were like top 7 or 8 in the rankings, and you kind of you figured that they weren't going to stay there, and it's not like they've had some super dramatic drop off. But I think most of the freak out I saw yesterday from Tennessee fans was, oh my goodness, how are they ever going to compete with Georgia and Alabama and Ohio State and Texas and all these people if they can't recruit to that level? Which I understand.
Yes. Now, a couple things. One, we have the last 4-team playoff here. And if you look at Michigan's recruiting and you look at Washington's recruiting, they should not be in the 14 playoff. So why are they?
Right.
They're there. Well, first of all, they're there because they both have first-round quarterbacks. So that elevates your roster. So if Nico is that guy, Tennessee's going to have a chance to be not just in the 12 team, but the chance to do something. Also, they're there because of coaching. Because I think Kalen DeBoer is one of the most impressive kind of relatively new on the scene coaches in college football. And, Harbaugh, I mean, he got another notice of allegations yesterday. My goodness.
He did.
I mean, he may be cheating up at Storm and cutting corners wherever he can, but also he leaned in on let's play bully ball like no one else plays bully ball. And then you still recruit well enough around it. You have really good skill. And, I mean, they have a style that I think elevates just the overall talent level, right? And that's what we're going to find out about Tennessee. And, like, again, this offense, there's still, until somebody with this offense actually gets to the highest level of sport, there's going to be some question about whether you can, but they do have a style. I mean, I think last year we saw a team that absolutely was good enough to be in the 4 team at its best and make trouble for people in that 4 team, right? So you take it all together. To me, you should still be excited. I think that this year, losing some of those recruits, Robbie, I think it does have to do with an 8-4 season. I mean, there's still it's NIL, but once everybody gets in on NIL, then there's still those factors of your coaching. Are you developing as the pros, and do you have a chance to win national championships? Those things still matter to recruits. Those still going to be tiebreakers when everybody's getting paid, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that did hurt them this year, but I think you should be excited as a Vols fan. The Nico era is going to define the Josh Heupel era.
Yeah.
To me, it's very simple.
I don't think there's any question about that. Join Jared Stillman, Chris Sanders, Derek Mason at Teddy's Tavern this Sunday from 9:30 to 11:30 for our NFL pregame show. They'll break down the Titans' Week 16 matchup against the Seahawks and give you the latest updates before the game. Our NFL pregame show presented by Parma Tractor and Equipment and Beast Unleashed. Coming up next, we'll be joined for the next 30 minutes by Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports. We'll get into all things NFL with him. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. And as we do every Thursday morning at 8 o'clock, we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in our buddy Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports. Charles, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well, gentlemen. How are you doing this morning?
We are doing great. Appreciate you taking time to be with us. Charles, so the Titans offensive line, which has just been a special level of bad all year long, gets Will Levis hurt on Sunday against Houston. They give up 7 sacks, 11 quarterback hits, can't run the ball. Derrick Henry averaged 0.6 yards per carry, which I don't remember ever happening before in his career, but I'm sure it has come close to that at some point. And now it looks like if Levis can't play Sunday, Ryan Tannehill is going to be the quarterback. I'm curious from your view, kind of looking into this thing, what do you think the market is going to be like for Tannehill once they get to the offseason and you kind of evaluate what's out there? Do you think he could be a starter somewhere? Is he a bridge quarterback? Is he a high-level backup? How do you view the Tannehill situation right now?
Well, let's see if he gets back in the saddle. Let's see if he can show how healthy he is. Obviously, he's been out since effectively being replaced, early in the season because of the injury. But, I look at Joe Flacco in Cleveland, and I think that if anything, it proves to others that a guy like Tannehill still has value. I don't know that you necessarily look at Ryan Tannehill going into this offseason. I think he's going to turn 36 this summer and say, hey, that's a guy that we want to hang our hat on. But I could see him being an option in terms of, backup depth, experience, and then knowing that, let's see what happens in training camp, depending on what other quarterbacks are on the roster for an NFL team. Again, but let's see how he finishes the season. I mean, if the Ryan Tannehill we saw early in the season, and again, you mentioned the offensive line, it's not like those problems won't still be there if he does end up getting the starting nod. It's going to be a situation similar to earlier in the season. So if he finishes the way he started the year, it's going to be significantly diminished value for Ryan Tannehill. But to me, the potential to have this opportunity, he can showcase himself for other teams out there. I think the thing about Tannehill that's good is that he's played in a couple of different systems. He's got some, I think, flexibility in terms of, he's like Flacco's dead in the water. I mean, he's not able to run. He's always had heavy feet, but I mean, that has really, really gotten bad at this point in his career. I have to believe that if Tannehill's 100% healthy and I have to choose between he and Joe Flacco, I probably lean into Tannehill. And he frankly works with, I would think, more quarterbacks, how you want to stylistically run an offense. There just aren't a lot of offenses where it's like, okay, we're going to bring in Joe Flacco. He's limited. He's going to win from the pocket, but that's pretty much all he can do. I would think Tannehill still can offer you a little more scheme flexibility. But, at this point, clearly not a long-term starter for anybody. Clearly, at best, I would think for Ryan Tannehill, maybe he gets an opportunity to go into a camp, fight out, training camp and become a bridge starter in 2024. I don't think that's what any team would want to be looking for at this stage, but there's definitely a lot of value at the backup quarterback position around the league. Look at what happened with the Jets this year. I think every single contender to me going into the next rotation next year has to look at the Jets and go, let's just not put ourselves in that situation. Let's allocate, $3, $4, $5 million. Look at Gardner Minshew in Indianapolis. Let's allocate enough money to make sure that we have a guy there in case our starter goes down. And it's interesting because I've even had, be careful how I say this, but there were some backup quarterback situations that developed over the course of the season, and I even had a couple of people from different teams who reached out and were like, do you know why we didn't spend a little more money to secure a solid backup so we're not in this situation? Because they got into a corner where they just didn't have experience when the starter became injured, and it potentially jeopardized their ability to stay in a playoff race. So, I think you'll see teams that will be considered in contention next year. I think they'll hunt solid backup options maybe a little more aggressively than what happened this last offseason.
The one place that I think is a natural potentially for Ryan Tannehill would be Atlanta with Arthur Smith.
Sure.
That's presuming
Right, yeah.
Arthur Smith is
Everybody
back.
Yeah.
But
okay.
yeah, there's that. But also, I would also look at like a Justin Fields as some. It could be enticing if the Bears are going to move on and they're going to take one of these guys at the top. How do you see that playing out? What is the Fields, situation, the market? How much is that going to dictate a lot of other things?
Well, Arthur Smith is definitely, there's zero doubt in my mind he's coaching for his job at this point in Atlanta, because Arthur Blank gets asked, the owner there gets asked about Arthur Smith, and he says, we're committed, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically says, we're committed to Arthur Smith for the rest of these games. And you're like, all right, well, that's about
committed this week.
Yeah, exactly. We're clearly sent a message that Arthur Smith is going to be measured, to the end of the season. He did not get the sort of stamp of approval that, hey, we're happy and, we expect Arthur Smith back in 2024. And Arthur Blank had the opportunity to say that. And you can understand why. I mean, they, to really commit yourself to Desmond Ridder the way that they did, and I think sell ownership on it, and then for ownership to see a lot of the limitations that he brings to the table, especially when there are other elements of that offense that, look, Bijan Robinson, I understand he's a rookie, but I think everybody agrees that you can get more out of him as a player. I think Kyle Pitts, you're starting to see, now there's been injuries there, but you're certainly starting to see that there is a higher ceiling than what's been achieved. Obviously, Drake London. And I think, from the ownership layer, there's a question of, do we have the quarterback that can unlock some of the talent that we already have on the roster, and how much does that reflect on Arthur at this point? So, you brought up Fields. That's an interesting thing. I did a piece on Fields last week where I reached out to as many GMs as I could get, basically asking, what's the trade value of this guy? Where could he end up if he is traded? And then sort of the tailing question was like, would you do it? Would you trade him? Would you draft number 1 overall, Caleb Williams, or would you stick with Fields? And for the piece, I got 7 GMs who responded but then like all these guys afterward, like a day, 2, 3 days later, people are like trickling in with their assessments. I ended up getting 13 GMs. And interestingly enough, it was 11-2 were in favor of trading Fields, drafting Caleb. All of them said that the value was probably somewhere in the range of like a second rounder with some qualifiers, or like a third and a fifth. There was no first round value. It was all sort of, hey, maybe it's a second rounder or a third rounder that elevates into a second, all these different things. So I think the big takeaway though was that you don't have a lot of GMs sitting there staring at him go, yeah, that's a first round pick. Now he's had enough of a progression to warrant that in a deal. When I asked where, it was interesting because obviously Atlanta, because of the offense that Arthur Smith runs, a lot of RPOs, it was such a natural sort of destination that a lot of people looked at, including the need and the scheme that is run there. And so a lot of people were pointing at Atlanta, but also quite a few said, look, the Philly offense is where he needs to be. He's not going to be in Philly. He's not going to be in Indy where Shane Steichen runs that offense. But if Brian Johnson, the OC, were to leave and get a job, that's a place that a lot of people would point their finger. Unfortunately, I think the offensive struggles have probably taken the boom off him a little bit. Maybe he won't be in the next rotation. We'll see again how the season finishes. But yeah, I think Atlanta is certainly a possible destination for Fields. If Arthur were to remain, I would think that Ryan Tannehill would be a natural sort of addition there as an experienced backup. And I would even think if you went and got Fields, there would be some thought put into maybe we need to bring in Ryan too, because this is a guy that can be a quality backup, can help in a support role. If Fields were to get hurt, we have an experienced guy who can step in and start for us. I just don't know if Arthur's actually going to make it. And Atlanta, it seems like a pretty tight spot for him right now. But, if he's employed or if he's anywhere, let's say, as an OC next offseason or next season, I think that's a place that I would be looking at for Tannehill as well.
We'll have more with Charles Robinson with Yahoo Sports coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. We continue our conversation with Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports. So, Charles, we've talked with you about the MVP race. Dak Prescott putting up some gaudy numbers this year, and then they go out and just get absolutely shelled by Buffalo last weekend. How do you view where the MVP race currently stands? How much of a chance would you give maybe a Brock Purdy to win it? How do you view kind of the MVP race that's been really interesting to monitor this year as it's kind of shifted up and down?
Yeah, I think it's solidified, going into the last three games of the season. I think you're really looking at Prescott, Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, and then Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. And I think it's interesting when you look at their schedule. Dallas has got Miami and Detroit are going to two really big games, obviously, for the Cowboys. And you still have potentially the top seed available, to make a run at, depending on how San Francisco finishes out in the NFC. San Francisco's got Baltimore and the Rams. Both Dallas and San Francisco have Washington as well on their schedule. Baltimore is really the one that, they've got an opportunity to be that one seed. San Francisco, Miami, and Pittsburgh to finish out the season. That San Francisco game is going to be a monster on Christmas. Everybody's going to be watching that because it feels like a Super Bowl preview between those two teams. Look, Miami's going to be fighting for playoff positioning. I think that's a New Year's Eve game, and then New Year's Eve day game. And then Pittsburgh to close out the season is interesting because, the Steelers are 7-7 right now. I think they're going to want to obviously finish the season out strong. There's a lot of criticism right now for Mike Tomlin. It's going to be a big game for them, even if they're not necessarily in playoff contention at that point. So I would say out of the three, Lamar Jackson's got an opportunity to really showcase himself in the next three. And a lot of people are going to look at that San Francisco game on Christmas and say, like, hey, is this where the MVP ultimately gets seized between these three guys? Remains to be seen. I have a vote, so I have an AP vote. I can't say who I intend to vote for in the MVP race, but I will say this.
Hey, you can. No one's listening. You can say it.
Yeah, between those three, I don't know at this point, and I'm definitely going to be reaching out to, people across the league who have faced them and just say, hey, help me split this up between these three, and what should I be leaning into in this particular vote? It's that close, I think. Between the trio. One thing I'm curious about, I ask you guys this. So we've changed the format of how we vote for MVP now. Now it's Heisman ballot style where you basically list like your top five, right? And so this year I do think we're going to see where in the past it's always been like, you see quarterbacks will win it unanimously, or you'll see a couple of quarterbacks will split up some votes, and maybe there will be one or two outliers who snag a vote. I do think you're going to see Tyreek Hill will be a guy who gets votes in the process. I think Christian McCaffrey will be another player who gets votes in the process. I'm curious what you guys think about that format. And then also, are you like me where you just sort of think at this stage, I almost feel like there should be a quarterback MVP and then maybe, offensive player of the year has sort of become the not quarterback MVP of the league. I feel like it's whoever is the best skill position player often ends up winning offensive player of the year. And do you guys have like a problem with that? I feel like the league has turned into a quarterback league. So of course the MVP award is a quarterback award. Whereas in the past 20 years ago, it was very much a running back league. Like, you'd have these dominant running backs who were capable of winning MVP, whether it was like an Emmitt Smith or a LaDainian Tomlinson or whoever, because it was a league where, offenses were so heavily predicated on the running back position. I don't have a problem that it's become a quarterback league, but you do continue to hear this complaint from players where it's like, nobody but a quarterback can ever win the MVP. And I get it, but that's sort of where the league is. Are you guys okay with that? And what do you think of the voting?
Well, I think the format's fine, but and by the way, that thorough checking with people, I think that's what every Heisman voter does too. People clearly really dig in on that and do their homework and vote for Blake Corum to win the Heisman or whatever the hell, JJ McCarthy. Now, I think first of all, I think it's so stupid that we've ever in the NFL had two defensive players win the MVP, LT and Alan Page. It's just like the same thing with the Heisman. It should have been Ndamukong Suh in 2009. I voted him first. No one else. He was even on most ballots, which is just absurd. Like Aaron Donald should have an MVP by now, to me. So I just think that all of you who vote should stop being idiots and just voting for quarterbacks. Okay, it's not like this is a great year for a non-quarterback to win. I think Lamar Jackson's the MVP, but this would be a great year. I know this would be a great year for a non-quarterback to win it. Like Tyreek Hill or McCaffrey, I'd love to see that. So just do the right thing, Charles. Lead the charge, okay?
Well, okay, Tyreek Hill though. Here's my thing with Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill went down, and they were still able to win a game. And not only that, Jalen Waddle was like able to step into that role. It's not a 1-for-1, but it's hard for me to vote for someone to be an MVP when he goes down and the team still is able to win games. I'm like
the Tennessee game, though. The Tennessee game was a stark contrast of their offense with and without him.
Yeah, but also I would say there's a certain functionality when it comes to Tyreek Hill where, how much of his dependency is on how that scheme is run. And Tua, like, if we're going to sit here and call, Brock Purdy a game manager, you're going to tell me that Tyreek Hill, I'm not saying Tyreek Hill's like a game manager or anything, but clearly they lean that entire scheme into, him getting opportunities. And like, it's just what if Tua has a down game? Doesn't that functionally erase Tyreek Hill? How can he be the MVP of a team when his success is so heavily predicated on whether or not the quarterback plays well? I think that's part of why, to me, it's such a quarterback award now, is because it's an easy line to draw straight to the quarterback. A lot of skill position guys. And you could argue with McCaffrey too, actually. He is almost like a quarterback where, obviously you worry about the line and there are other factors that affect his skill, but he's an every down back. He blocks, he receives, he runs. He's almost like a quarterback in that you can draw a pretty straight line and go, a lot of his success, you see how it's predicated just on him. Put the ball in his hands, see what he can do with it, and it's easy to get him the ball. Whereas Tyreek Hill, it's like, well, he's a great player, but, you can scheme to ultimately shut him out. It's harder to scheme. Quarterbacks touch the ball, 50, 60, sometimes 70 times a game. They're always going to get their opportunities. There's a lot that goes into this, honestly, and I'm really, really curious to hear how people view the field this year. The defensive thing I think is really interesting, and Donald certainly, when he was, really playing at the highest level, certainly to me, he could have gotten MVP votes. And one of the things, the stories you don't really hear is like, I was talking to somebody with the Rams once about Aaron Donald, and they told me, they're like, look, when he retires, we are going to have to change our entire defense. Like, that's how good of a player he is. And like, you don't understand, we're not replacing him. We're starting over completely because everything we do on defense is 100% built around him. And once that changes, we could completely change schemes because of one person not being in there. You don't hear that a lot, and that's probably why a defensive player doesn't get MVP votes. But that's like LT type stuff.
Yeah. All right. Here's a heck of a segue. Real quick, someone not getting MVP votes would be Jalen Hurts this year. Actually, AJ Brown, I thought at one point this year might have been in a discussion too. It looks like a bleep show right now. Where the heck is that going?
Well, I know a lot of people are hammering Nick Sirianni, the head coach right now, about the whole, well, geez, late in the game, we could draw a pass interference penalty, and that's why maybe this ball gets put where it gets put. I do think there's an element of, you see Nick Sirianni protecting Jalen Hurts a little bit there. Hurts is not playing, I think, at his best level right now. I think really, though, across the board, the Eagles have a lot of problems, and it's not just Hurts, the defense. Obviously, Matt Patricia, what a weird situation for Sean Desai to effectively be taken out of the defensive coordinator position, but now continuing to call him the defensive coordinator, even though now Matt Patricia's shaping the scheme. He's calling the scheme for them on the sideline. He's the defensive coordinator for the Eagles at this point. Just, they're struggling, I think, on both sides of the ball. Defensively, I will tell you this. You do get a window into how the Eagles function with their coaching staff. There's a reason why Doug Peterson's not there, and it was because they wanted him to have pliability with his assistants. Like, hey, let's listen to the GM and the owner when it comes to making changes. Doug Peterson's like, yeah, not going to do that anymore. I want a Super Bowl for you guys. And they're like, well, then we're going to have to part company. That's why Nick Sirianni's there now. They wanted pliability with coaches. I think that's how you have Matt Patricia's situation bubble up the way it did late in the season. And so really it's, both sides of the ball are struggling. And, Hurts, I'll tell you what, think of all those major contract extensions signed last offseason. Burrow, man, injury. Herbert, oof, not gone well. Hurts, geez, we're struggling right now. I mean, other than maybe like Lamar Jackson, all those big monster contract extensions, he's probably the one guy right now who's really making the team feel great about having extended him. But yeah, the Eagles there's no doubt they're very, very vulnerable. But the place I would look, not Hurts, I'd look at that defense. I think the one thing you're going to see, they can't stop teams that can run the football. And there are a lot of teams in the NFC that can run the football. And I think you're going to see them run into somebody in the playoffs who's going to tear them up running the football. And just you're going to see an offseason that's going to be pretty interesting in terms of what they need to do to retool a little bit on the defensive side of the ball.
Charles Robinson, our guest here on Robby and Rexrode, joins us every Thursday morning at 8 o'clock. Charles, Merry Christmas. Thanks so much for taking time to be with us, and we'll talk to you next week.
Absolutely, gentlemen. Have a good one.
Absolutely. You
Thanks,
as
buddy.
well. We'll react to what Charles had to say. Take your thoughts. 615-737-1025, our phone number. Make your silly underdog picks today for your chance to win weekly prizes. You can play at theGameNashville.com or the 1025 The Game app. Silly underdog picks presented by Volunteer Hose and Gasket. This is Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you on this Thursday morning. Got some tickets to give away to see the Music City Bowl, the TransPerfect Music City Bowl, as Auburn takes on Maryland at Nissan Stadium on Saturday, December 30th. Be caller 3-615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. Caller number 3 will win a pair of tickets to see Auburn take on Maryland at Nissan Stadium. Coming up on Saturday, December 30th, the TransPerfect Music City Bowl. Hugh Freeze in action. I think Rexrode said the forked tongue.
The forked tongue of Hugh Freeze.
You can see that live and in person at Nissan Stadium on December 30th.
Yes.
Everybody looking forward to it, Joe.
That guy, I tell you what, is he a smooth talker?
He is. There's no doubt about it.
A couple things on the text side I'd like to address, Robbie.
Okay.
Driven by WilsonCountyHoney.com. One, Lester gets all mad at me. He says, gee, Joe, you know, a lot of whining about Harbaugh and McCorum and McCarthy and Michigan. Sounds like you need some Wisconsin cheese to go with your Sparty wine. Well, look, first of all, I gave Harbaugh respect, actually, and earlier someone got mad at me the other way and was like, they're only in the playoff because of Connor Stallions. And I was like, well, they have a good team. Like, I think Michigan and Alabama is going to be a good game. I don't think Connor Stallions is going to have a role in that. So,
although he might. That guy's stealthy. You never know.
That is true. But, two things can be true. They can be cheaters, and they can also be good. They are good. And all I'm saying about McCarthy and Corum is if you have a Heisman vote, I promise you those Heisman votes came from like Michigan fans who are media people who have Heisman votes who voted for Michigan players. They shouldn't have votes. If I voted for, Joe Milton this year as a Homer Tennessee media person with a Heisman vote, I should have my vote stripped too. I mean, come on.
I think you only had him third, right? He's third on your ballot?
Exactly. I mean, I bumped him down to second because Jalen Wright had too good of a season. He had to be second. So, yeah, I mean, come on. It's just crap. And all this stuff, just like what Charles is talking about. I mean, look, he's right about, like, when it comes down to it, if you really dig in on, like, the importance of a particular player, you can take a player out of a game, even a Tyreek Hill, like last week, Tua, who some people think sucks, lit it up with Jalen Waddle and the other guys and didn't have Tyreek Hill. And so that's like, well, how could he be MVP? But, man, I just really, especially defensive players, like this year, had the Cowboys been as good defensively as they looked early, like Micah Parsons maybe could be a guy at some point who could be a candidate, right?
Yeah.
But it'll be a quarterback. Also, a ton of people, Robbie, are asking about Tannehill. If he's just going to be a backup, this is kind of off what Charles said. If he's just going to be a backup, why not come here? I get the sentiment, but like I'm just telling you, he's not going to be here because what the Titans have here now is they have the young established. They've got their guy for the future, and he's going to be the guy. If you're someone like Tannehill, it's like kind of like Mariota. You could have made the case for Mariota too. Why not just be the back? You're going to be a backup. Well, at that point, he's still trying to look around and be a starter. And Tannehill, even though he's a lot older now than Mariota was then, is in that position too. It's possible for him to be a starter in this league, and it's at least possible to be a backup in a place where you'd have a better opportunity to maybe get in there and start and show you can still be a starter. That place is not here. So I'm not.
Well, he probably wants to move on himself, right? Like it's
yes.
Sometimes you reach the end of a road somewhere and you're like, all right, it's best for everybody to just go ahead and move on.
Exactly. So he's going to move on. Like I put it at 99.99%. I understand the idea, but right now Ryan Tannehill is not like, well, I'm just going to be a backup, so hey, I'll just stay here. He's not thinking that. He's thinking, I'm good enough to start. I shouldn't have lost my job here. I can go win as a starting quarterback in the NFL, and I'm going to find that place. Whether you believe him or not.
Right, that's the thing. Like, what you think of it, I hear, I think a lot of people think the idea of him being a starting quarterback next year is a little bit ludicrous. I don't think that. Like, I think the right spot, he could still be an effective player. The Arthur Smith part of this is really interesting because clearly that's a natural fit with Tannehill and Smith. But it does kind of feel like, well, if you'd asked me a couple weeks ago, I thought Arthur Smith is probably safe in his job. When you lose to the Carolina Panthers, things tend to change a little bit. And those comments by Arthur Blank earlier this week of Yeah, we're committed to Arthur Smith through the end of the season. And it's like, okay, that's like the old dreaded vote of confidence that you get from your
Yeah.
general manager.
No, it's that because like he said, he had every opportunity. I mean, Jeff Schultz wrote a column for us, which basically said the same thing. Like it could get bad. Basically, like he could be out. It's possible. I think he's coaching for his job right now. I mean, I guess my question is, can he still save it? Now, I mean, if they win the division, which is still possible, then I would think so, right? I mean, that's a big save. But there's just a lot of stuff going on there that's been and I think the biggest thing, and Jeff wrote this, the biggest thing is that he did participate in the choosing of Desmond Ridder, and it's a bad choice. He's bad.
He's not
bad
good.
Quarterback. If Arthur Smith gets fired, that's a quarterback getting a guy fired. Because if you just don't commit ghastly turnovers in the red zone over and over again, you're winning the AFC South this year.
The one he had on Sunday was just brutal.
Unbelievable.
Just brutal. An interception that he threw in that game. And like I said, you lose the Carolina Panthers, then ideas start to get rolling. Look, Tampa Bay right now is winning that division. New Orleans is 7-7. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see who wins that down the stretch here. But I do think if they get left out, that he's probably going to be fired. And then we get into, Joe, Arthur Smith is out there. He's available. Should Vrabel and the Titans bring him back in? Which I know you and Jared had a very passionate.
Man, look, I'm a quick, easy no, and I understand some people will argue with me, and that's fine. I'm not saying it's like not. I mean, I'm not saying it's not a worthwhile discussion or consideration, but they just changed to a totally different offense. They changed away from the modern West Coast to I guess the modern Patriots offense. It's a different offense. It's different terminology. You have to keep going with what you have for Will Levis. And we did have this. I kind of put this into discussion. I will admit that if you gave me exactly the same situation, exactly the same personnel and everything else, and you said the only question is, are you putting Arthur Smith in that with that personnel? Or you're starting fresh, or are you putting Tim Kelly? I'll pick Arthur Smith. I mean, I've seen him do more as an OC than Kelly so far, but that's not the situation. I mean, Arthur Smith right now doesn't look like an offensive genius either, does he? Not even remotely like one. He looked like one in 2020 with the Tennessee Titans as OC with fantastic personnel. He doesn't look like one now. And I think Tim Kelly is fine, and I think they need to go forward. And I mean, the idea of firing him now and saying, come on in, Arthur, and just let's reinstall that offense, I think would be silly. I don't think it'll be considered. I understand it'll be discussed.
Can Arthur Smith block? Did he blocker?
He was a grinder, right? He was an offensive lineman in college.
Yeah, man.
I mean, honestly, there's probably some reps at left tackle he could have done better than some that we saw this year.
615-737-1025, our phone number. Coming up next, it's time for Pred's Pick to Click. Pred's back in action tonight, taking on the Philadelphia Flyers. Be the first caller, 615-737-1025, our phone number. If you guess a goal scorer for the Predators tonight, you win a pair of tickets to a future Nashville Predators home game. That's coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game.
It's time for Pred's Picks to click.
And a shot at the score.
Do you think you know who will score a goal in tonight's Predators game?
Little give and go.
Shoot your shot for a chance to win Preds tickets. Call 615-737-1025 now. Pick to Click is brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. Visit tjandersonhomes.com to see why they are preferred so often. It's Pick to Click, now on Robby and Rexrode.
It is that time of the day, time for Pred's Pick to Click here on Robby and Rexrode. Presented by TJ Anderson Homes, the Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold. Pred's back in action tonight, taking on the Philadelphia Flyers. Puck drop 6 o'clock, pregame 5 o'clock. Here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. The standings are as follows in the competition. No change from last time out. Listeners in first place with 8 correct answers. Joe Rexrode in second with 7 correct answers. Nick Keyser in third with 5. And I remain at 2, which I've been at, according to Nick Keyser, since November the 9th. So we'll see if that changes heading into tonight's contest with the Flyers. With that in mind, let's go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in April. April, good morning. Thanks for calling in. Who is your pick to click for the Nashville Predators?
Good morning. I'm going to go with the glorious. I'm using that reference for Joe, Philip Forsberg.
Thank you, April. Appreciate you calling in.
Have a good day.
Good
Forsberg and a glorious reference in there. That was well done by April.
I don't think April even likes the song Glorious, Domination, but I think that she just likes to troll me about it.
I'm here for it. I think she should continue doing that. Forsberg off the board. Nick Keyser, your pick to click for the Nashville Predators.
All right. He is having his father for the first time on the father's trip. Give me Luke Evangelista in tonight's game against the Philadelphia Flyers.
Wow. Going Luke Evangelista. I like it. Joe, I will go with Ryan O'Reilly. Apologies to Ryan O'Reilly. Forsberg, Evangelista, O'Reilly off the board. Your pick to click for the Nashville Predators.
By the way, Evangelista, what's his name? Vincenzo Cutlets, or what's his little nickname there? What
like Pretty Boy Vincenzo or something like
Pretty
that?
Boy
Yes.
Vincenzo, right? Yeah. Who came up with that?
It's an old gamer tag of his, apparently.
Okay. All right. Well, back to my pick. Well, I'll just go with the same line. Okay. It's like, how about Nyquist gets one?
Gus Nyquist. I like it. Forsberg, Evangelista, O'Reilly, Nyquist. The selections and Pred's Pick to Click brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold. If you missed our interview earlier with Predators head coach Andrew Burnett, you can check it out, Robby and Rexrode, wherever you search your podcast, Apple, Spotify, and download that interview. Really enjoyed having him on the program earlier in the show today. Joe, final thoughts on the Tannehill discussion we were just having a minute ago. If he gets in there Sunday, and by the way, they did confirm yesterday that if Levis can't go, it will be Tannehill starting on Sunday against the Seahawks. So not a huge surprise there. What did you make of what Charles had to say in terms of like what Tannehill has to prove here? Like getting back, getting healthy. You know, can he play at a reasonably high level? Can he move around? Those sorts of things. You know, the mobility part of it as well. What do you think is actually on the line for Tannehill if he gets in there and plays on Sunday against the Seahawks?
Well, first of all, any GM who's going to base the the idea of signing him on like his production, however long he plays, and I think it'll be the last 3 weeks, to me is, not paying attention to how bad this offense is. But it's an interesting point about kind of showing that you've got that mobility. Tannehill can run around. Tannehill, that's an asset for him. It's a great contrast to the heavy-footed Joe Flacco.
Yes.
Tannehill is not one of those guys. He's not a statue, and his athleticism has been a benefit to him, and that's so I think that's maybe Tannehill should go ask Tim Kelly about a little bit of QB power, some QB draws. Honestly, if I'm a QB in this offense, I think I might prefer designed runs to like trying to drop back into a pocket that I know is made of quicksand.
Yeah, at least you can see where they're coming from then. Like, oh, he's trying to tackle me. Okay, I'm gonna try to dodge him.
Yeah, and you can just go out there and you can slide. Show Levis how to slide. Well, you could.
Well, Tannehill didn't know how to slide either.
Well, yeah, that's true. He's had a few, but he has done it some.
He has.
I mean, Levis got to wear that. The whole if Levis can't go, I mean, I'm telling you, I just went 99.99% that Tannehill is going to be somewhere else, and I'm 99.999% that Tannehill starts Sunday and plays against Seattle. I mean, there's no way Levis is ready.
The high ankle sprain, which doesn't mean what it used to mean, apparently.
Yeah, high ankle sprain. If it's actually a high ankle sprain, then he's out for the year. He's done. But I don't know. He's walking around yesterday, so I guess anything that's an ankle sprain, but it's like an inch higher. I don't know. The term high ankle sprain used to basically mean 4 to 6 weeks.
We're going to see a Malik Willis package on Sunday against the Seahawks. They've thrown in a few packages. They've resulted in a few fumbles too. I wonder if we'll see one.
I mean, I would think about it if I was Tim Kelly. If he's going to be active, he's your QB too. Why not? Why not try a few different things in there? I mean,
because every time you do, they fumble the ball.
Well, yeah, that's true. Aaron Brewer doesn't like him. He sees him and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to snap it over his head."
Yeah,
let me send one to the third row. But yeah, maybe some Willis. I mean, I guess there's still people debating like whether it should be Willis or Tannehill. I think we're of the same mind on that one. I mean, I think Tannehill was always going to be the choice if you're trying to win. You're trying to win a football game, whether you like it or not, Titans fans. Kindly shut up.
Yes,
as some people like to tell you. Kindly shut up, okay?
Ben on the text line. Does Joe know what a gamer tag is? Rexrode, are you familiar with the term?
I'm assuming that's your name on your little PlayStation or whatever. Is that what that is?
That's very good. Yes, by you. Way to go.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Nicely done.
By the way, April says, Joe, it's not a song I listen to, but I like it at the Preds game. And I do like trolling you. I'm not a mean, crazy troll like those crazies on social media. And she loves her show. Have a great day. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Same to you, April. We appreciate you. And I don't want you to get a point because I'm in a serious race with the listeners here, but we appreciate you.
We appreciate all of you. And like I said earlier, I'm out of the race. I mean, I'm done in Preds Pick to Click. We're not even halfway through the year, and I'm just eliminated from the competition. When you've won it 2 years in a row, like I have, sometimes you just gotta allow other people to win every now and then.
You won it 2 years in a row?
Yeah, bro.
Wow. Well, that's I didn't realize that. Well, I'm glad you stink this year. By the way, big fantasy football semifinals. So if you're not in the semis of the Robby Rexrode Fantasy League, I can't relate to you. So, and Coy and Clarksville's going down this week.
Oh, Coy and Clarksville, a nice matchup this weekend. I'm pulling for Coy.
Well, I'm sure you are. But we got into an argument with Coy yesterday on the text. What was he screaming about? He was mad about something.
People get mad at us all the time. I don't know. Were people mad about Jim Schwartz yesterday?
Well, I think Coy's a big. Schwartz was the real DD coordinator, and Vrabel needs to be fired. Is that right, Coy?
Well, Kevin was that for sure on the text line yesterday. I'm glad we made it the whole show without somebody talking about Jim Schwartz because I had enough of that at the end of the show yesterday.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry for bringing it up.
It's okay.
You said that we can't talk about it, and I brought it up on my own today. I'm sorry.
That does it for us.
He who shall not be named.
That's right. He's Voldemort. That does it for us on Robby and Rexrode today. We'll be back 6 a.m. tomorrow. Chasing Big Joe up next. This is 102.5, 106.3 The Game.